A few years back, my colleague Ursula Verstegen and I were working with a German network of physicians. And their question was how to connect deeper and better with their patients. We brought in a group of students, gave them a one-day training in deep listening and dialogue, covering pretty much the material that you covered in the first 2 weeks of the u.lab. And then we sent them on a journey where they shadowed for a week the physicians, kind of experiencing what that relationship looked like from their angle. And after that, they interviewed 100 selected patients and their 30 physicians with deep listening dialogue interviews, basically listening to their life's story. And then we invited everyone to a feedback session in a local school. 100 of them showed up on a Saturday morning, and we showed them this slide here, and we basically said, look, we read all the transcripts of all the conversations, and here is what we heard you guys describing. 4 different levels of patient-physician relationship. And the first one basically revolves around repairing broken pieces, repairing a defect. And the role of the physician here is that of a mechanic. And here's an example of that. My health issue is that I have a broken part, a defect. The role of my physician is that he is fixing that part. So you hear that in that level of patient-physician relationship, it's just kind of a, transactional. There is not a lot involvement of the patient other than, having the broken part fixed. Then on a second level, we see somewhat deeper relationship, which is revolving our therapy, which really gets into the behavior that is creating these broken pieces or the defects, the health issues. And the role of the physician here is that of an instructor. And here's an example for that. I want my physician to tell me, eat more of this, less of that, work out a little bit. Then on an even deeper level, the third level, we see a relationship that is more based on reflection, inquiring into the deeper assumptions that actually drive behavior and drive health issues. And the role of the physician here is the role of the coach. Here's an example for that. One becomes sick in order to think. When you say you don't have the time, time will be forced onto you by making you sick. When you don't consider life as a gift, then you become sick. And finally, we saw a few examples that were describing a 4th level of patient-physician relationship. One that we called kind of self-transformation, that really deals with connecting deeper with who we really are. And in that relationship, the role of the physician really is the role of the midwife for bringing forth the new. And here's an example for that. I have been someone who never got sick, and then all of a sudden I had cancer. I had always worked hard and just neglected the fact that I was sick. I went back to work full time, but 2 years later I broke down. After surgery, I learned to talk with my doctor about my disease. I only learned at the age of 58 to say no. I didn't even realize that I lost my identity on the way down. And now, I'm not concerned about my future anymore. Today is important to me, now. And you feel that with this quote, we even connect and experience a deeper level of connecting to ourselves and to each other. And then we said, okay, so those are the 4 levels that we heard. Now we want you to talk about where you see your own current experience of the system, on which level, and then where you want to see it in the future. And after a while, after people talked in small groups, we gave them dots to vote and to assess the current reality and where they wanted the system to move. With a red dot where they experienced current reality, and with a green dot where they wanted the system to move going forward. And here is what they came up with. When they came back and sat down again, we saw this picture. And this picture shows that both the patients and their physicians came up with the same assessment, that current reality pretty much revolves around level 1 and 2, repairing broken parts. And then, in terms of the future that they wanted to create, they also both came up with the assessment. They pretty much wanted to see it revolve around level 3 and 4. When I saw that, facilitating this session, I asked them, so what you just did is that you said that you came up with the same assessment, kind of current reality is here and the future that you want to create is here on level 3 and 4. So why is it, and you both, patients and physicians, seem to agree on that, why is it that you collectively create results that no one wants, which is level 1 and 2? And why is it that collectively you're unable to actually create the results that you say you do want, which is level 3 and 4? Because after all, in this community, you are the system. The system is not kind of what the people in Berlin or in Brussels are doing to you. You are the system. And in the moment of stillness that followed that question, you could feel how the whole perception of the system, how the whole perception of the field was shifting from one way of seeing the system, which is out there, kind of what the people in Brussels and Berlin are doing to us, to another way of seeing the system that includes myself, and where I realize that the system that we enact in this community really emerges from the choices that I take, kind of from the relationship that I choose to operate from to my patients, kind of to my physician. Shortly after, a man stood up and introduced himself as the mayor. And he said, look, I am the mayor in this community here, and in politics, in local politics, this, and he was pointing to this chart, is exactly our problem. All our attention is going into this here, where the red dots are, level 1 and 2, which is reacting against the issues of the past. And as a community, we are unable to focus our attention and to draw our resources on these levels here, level 3 and 4, that would enable us to sense and shape the future. Shortly after, a woman stood up and said, and I'm a teacher here in this school, and the problem, the issue kind of we have in education today and we have in our school is exactly this problem, which is that all we do today, all we can do in our current educational system is to operate on these first 2 levels, which means we are transmitting kind of dead bodies of knowledge kind of into the heads of our students that after their graduation really isn't that much of value to them. While we are unable to redirect our resources and while we are unable to create learning environments that would allow our students to connect with their own deeper sources of knowing and kind of to strengthen their capacity of sensing and actualizing kind of emerging future possibilities. After she sat down, a man next to me stood up and introduced himself as the farmer, and he said, and this is exactly the problem we have in conventional farming today. So the conventional kind of industrial paradigm of farming is exactly operating on these assumptions kind of that we see on systems on level 1 and 2, which is you have that the earth is a dead body, basically. You have to put in fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides and so forth. It's kind of the dead input-output model that we're operating on, while as a community of farmers, we are unable to really activate these deeper levels to connect to Earth and to the ecosystems kind of as a living system kind of that we can co-create and co-evolve with, and so on and so on. So what you see here is a shift, that when people were doing the assessment and reflecting on how they were operating and contemplating the question, where they shifted their perspective from a level 1 and 2 view, which is seeing the system outside, to a level 3 and 4 view, in which you begin, as you turn around the perspective, as you turn around the camera, where you begin to see yourself as part of the system. And that then the mayor stands up and reflects on his practice, and the teacher stands up and reflects on her practice, and the farmer stands up. That's a very typical phenomenon once a conversation is moving into a dialogic space, because all of a sudden you see the pattern, and then once you see the pattern in one system, it's not that difficult to see the same pattern, to recognize the same pattern also in other systems. So that's what we mean with co-sensing. It's an event that allows the system to see itself. Many years later, when we did some interviews with members of this community in order to find out what it was that allowed this community and this network to be that much more innovative and that much more successful in realizing a number of breakthrough innovations, many of them pointed to this event as a turning point in their own learning, in their own journey, that allowed them to connect with each other and with the system in a more direct way, and also to translate ideas into prototypes and experiments with much more ease.